Do you guys think Redfall is better now? There was recently one final update put into Redfall. Could this change everything? Back in 2023, Microsoft was hyping up Redfall as one of the biggest brand new releases that would come exclusively to the Xbox and, PC. I mean, exclusive as in like not on PlayStation. And historically speaking, Xbox has pretty much been trying to play catch up when it comes to having strong, heavy-hitting first-party titles ever since the downfall of the 2013 Xbox One reveal. That reveal made it very apparent that first-party gaming wasn't the focus of Xbox for a couple of years at that point, and when they had to quickly backpedal from that, it's just been a long road of Microsoft trying to play catch-up when it comes to reasons why people should buy an Xbox over a PlayStation, why people should use Xbox and PC Game Pass over, I guess, not subscribing to it. And with how much Microsoft had been advertising Redfall, promoting it, and hyping it up as one of their big first-party releases after they spent $7.5 billion on Bethesda, I don't know, some Xbox fans thought, hey, maybe we're about to get a rare Xbox W for once. Instead, we got a game called Redfield, and this game definitely did not live up to those expectations. Matter of fact, it was announced that support for the game would be ending, the studio Arcane Austin would be closed down, and Xbox would have to try again with them trying to build out a different IP. Now, Redfall fell into a really weird place, because according to critics, it wasn't just a bad game, it was worse, a boring game. When Redfall first released, Luke and I both tried the game out, and we played with some friends, and we managed to put 1 hour and 5 minutes into the game before we logged out and never played the game again. But what if there's a chance that the game is better than it was at launch? You see, after the release of Redfall, the studio Arcane Austin continued to provide updates to the game, with 3 major updates / content drops being released, with the most recent one being posted right before the shutdown was fully put into effect. Maybe deep down, there's fun to be had in this game, and we just have to play the game enough to find it. So, for the next week, we're going to be playing Redfall every single day. This is what happened. So, this is a co-op experience. So, to play the game the way that it's supposedly intended to be played, we had to get a full team of 4 players together. So, there was me, Elijah, I played as Layla, Luke played as Remy, then we got our friend Rocket Dim to join us, who played as Divinder, and lastly, our friend Camille joined us, who was going to play as Jacob, except because she didn't have the game installed at the time that we invited her, she was going to play the first night on the Xbox Cloud. However, the Xbox Cloud system wasn't working. It said that, I don't know, the game session had to be played on an Xbox Series X or S, which doesn't make sense because that was an Xbox Series S. We tried troubleshooting this for a bit, but then all controller inputs stopped working on the Xbox Cloud, so part of the first day was spent downloading the game. Nonetheless, Luke, Dim, and I started things off in the game, and we were introduced to this exposition cutscene, which is in this weird art style, and it shows you, I guess, what happened. Apparently they were like testing on someone, and then vampires. I don't know. When you finally are in the first person perspective, you wake up on this boat, you see some vampires doing, I don't know, their vampire thing. And then this other vampire comes and runs at you, and you're like, oh no, this isn't good. But then she holds you up and chats with you for a bit and says that she needs you alive. And then the sun comes, and I guess that's their weakness. So she starts burning, so she drops you and then, I don't know, runs away. So right out of the gate, I felt like we had an equal understanding as to what this game's story was about as every other player who ever tried this game probably had on day one. We were pretty confused. We finally did get control of our characters, and we ran around a little bit trying to figure out why we're on this boat. We were looking at this coffee stand for a second, and we thought that it was interesting how they chose to put this whiteboard that has the menu on it behind the coffee maker. So some of the things on this menu you can't even see, like what costs $7 here. There's no way you could tell if you were trying to order things. Not a very realistic coffee shop. Also, if these are $2.50 each, why is it a deal to get 2 for $5? That's just the price. I don't know. I guess maybe that's not too important. We found some weapons. We went outside and were able to do a little bit of combat right out of the gate. There's these, I guess they're like cultists or something, and they're on the vampire side. I don't know why, but they shoot at you and you have to shoot them back. We did find it kind of weird that if you kill a cultist who has a really good gun or a better gun than what you have, they don't drop the weapon where you could pick it up. They only drop ammo, so you can't like get weapons in the way you would expect it to be. And as we were fighting our way through some of the cultists, I experienced my first glitch. I had this like ammo magazine thing just kind of spinning out of control here. I don't know what this is. Yeah, I mean, it's on a game-breaking glitch, but it is something. So when you're you're this early on in the game, the main objective you have is to make your way to the fire station, which is kind of like the main little secret base hideout that you have. It's like the hub world where you accept most of your missions. So we kind of just wandered over that direction. We found out that there were supposedly survivors in the fire station, like who had barricaded themselves off from cultists. So we had to go in there and help those guys out a little bit. And then of course there's like a big vampire inside of the fire station that we have to kill. And he kind of was a pushover. I felt like when we first played, we fought this vampire, he was way harder than this time around. Mind you, we're playing on midnight difficulty, which is the hardest default difficulty that's in the game until you beat the game. Then you can upgrade the difficulty to a higher one. But yeah, this one wasn't too bad. So after that, we were able to open up the fire station, and then we get this weird cutscene establishing that we're now in the fire station. I kind of forgot how dumb these cutscenes are. These feel like very, very lazy cutscenes. We get some poor narration of our character talking about what's going on and what they think, but they're trying to be like funny in the writing or clever in the writing, and it just comes across as like not at all matching the tone of the story in game on the other side of things. And like I said, like they really should have just opted into going for animations here, or a CG cutscene, or anything is better than this. I feel like this is the worst way to tell a story. I also had one of the characters in this cutscene posing in the background, which I thought was goofy. Also, while I was in the fire station exploring around, I was looking at these different pictures that they have hung up, like of the different fire chiefs that have been in charge of this fire station. There's some newspaper clippings here that are framed on the staircase, and this first one, you know, okay, I could see that being in a fire station. The second one, talking about the tragic death of one of the fire chiefs, seems like a really, really weird newspaper article to frame and hang up at the fire station. Like, it'd be one thing if you kept the newspaper article for whatever reason and, you know, it was like a personal piece, but to frame it and hang it up for everyone to see, it just immediately makes me think that whoever became the new fire chief must have murdered the old fire chief. But then why would you brag about it? I don't understand this. I'm probably looking way too deep into this, but I feel like this was just like a weird thing to see in this game. This probably is intentional, but did anyone else find it ironic that the pregnant woman over here is wearing a t-shirt that has the word Baron on the t-shirt? Anyone? After looking around for a bit, we finally decided to go on our first actual quest in the real world, where we're supposed to go search for a helicopter, and we're looking for survivors or supplies or something. As we're running out in the open, we came across this house, and we wanted to go inside it to look around for loot. Luke ended up wasting a lockpick because it turns out you can just jump through the window, which would save you the hassle, I guess. We did end up cracking a safe upstairs, which gave us a stake launcher, which apparently isn't that good of a weapon. We would soon learn, at least. So, nothing really too interesting to find here. During this mission, Luke accidentally also ended up falling off of a cliff and landed in this red mist, which the red mist will kill you. And he got downed. I tried to follow to help revive him. I ended up getting down. It was this whole ordeal. And then we learned one of the weird flaws about this game. If you die and you don't get revived, you respawn all the way back at the fire station. And there's not even like a coward's way out option where you can accelerate the bleed out time. If you're bleeding out, you're just stuck there for a long time waiting for this circle to finally go all the way closed. So if you're in a position where you can't be revived, you literally just have to wait, and then your punishment for dying is you have to wait even longer and then run all the way back from the fire station to your location unless you have a fast travel point unlocked nearby. This occasionally led to some weird goofy moments happening, but mostly just frustrating moments overall. So we found our way to the helicopter, we cleared out the enemies, we completed the objective, and then we're tasked at going to another helicopter. I'm just wondering how many helicopters crashed here that there's multiple crashed helicopters we have to go look for survivors and supplies at. Did the helicopters crash into each other? Why did they both crash at the same time, and why are they assigned to the same mission? I don't know if we'll ever get those answers. I'll be honest, so far the game wasn't necessarily off to the greatest start impression-wise. Things do get interestingly better for a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a second, so stay with us, but like, things also get really, really weird as we go along. For a little while, with the deaths that happened and us respawning at the fire station some of the time and then fast traveling, there was a little moment where we all kind of got split up somehow, but we were all converging back to where we're supposed to go up this hill with the windiest road I've ever seen. We eventually did make our way to the second helicopter crash, and we noticed there were a bunch of supplies lined up here, so we were prepping because we were pretty sure they were setting things up for us to have our first real boss fight of the game. We're a little bit nervous, but we're gonna try the best that we could, and after we got stocked up and we went in to fight the boss, there wasn't a boss. The level just ends. That's it. We just had to come up here for a second. Okay, so we were then back at the fire station once again, And it was around this point that Camille's download had finished, so she was able to just drop in as Jacob, and now we finally had the full team of 4 players. We kind of ran around for a bit and got used to the controls, but we didn't do too much more this day. Day 2 would be a little more eventful. Okay, so going into day 2, we had a new quest at hand. There was apparently some medical facility that we had to go investigate to figure out what maybe started this vampire thing or why the cultists are doing their stuff. There's a lot of questions, not a lot of explanations as to why we're doing some of these things. I found myself constantly having to ask the group, what's the point of the story? I mean, they could tell me like what we were going to do or what our objective was, but not a lot of us could talk about why we were told we had to go and do these things. And it's not like we weren't paying attention either. We were trying to follow the story, but man, these cutscenes just don't do the story any justice whatsoever. So we made our way over to this hospital facility. We tried to find a way inside of the hospital for a while, but we couldn't figure it out. Then we realized maybe we're not supposed to actually go in the hospital, but just around the hospital area. I saw that if you punch a pumpkin, the physics of this pumpkin are interesting. Don't show this to a Halo Infinite fan because they'll get really, really upset, but this pumpkin punching is next level game physics. So we found our objective in the building next to the hospital, and it was like a movie reel, and then we had to figure out like how are we going to be able to watch this movie reel. Well, luckily for us, there is a movie theater in town that they've shown off a couple of times in different cutscenes and whatnot, so we had to make our way over there. It was around this time I started trying out my ability using my elevator jump to move around quicker. I wasn't the best at it. I felt like a lot of the times I could have just parkoured something easier than using my elevator ability, but hey, I was learning. I was trying to get started. But oh no, there's a bunch of enemies in here, and the enemies in here are actually, at least for once, a little bit different. They had like this shield thing going on that I wasn't really fully sure how it worked, but yeah, we fought the enemies. There was another vampire, a pretty strong one actually, and we just kind of lit them up on the stairs and they were dead. When we finally did clear out the movie theater, we're like, okay, let's go put the movie in and see what's going on. We go up to put the movie in the thing and it's like, oh, you need to get a new part for the movie player. So we had to go look for that. Fortunately, we found the fixed part in the basement. So then we had to re-travel back up, put the movie in, and we could finally watch this cutscene thing. And the cutscene is in pretty low quality like the rest of the game story presentation was. Well, after watching this low quality cutscene, we did complete the level and all of our games froze momentarily while it saved or whatever. We thought our game crashed, but we could still hear characters talking, so we hung in there a little longer, and then eventually it unfroze and we moved on. It wasn't the biggest deal, but it was something that I wanted to note here. After going back to the fire station once again, we got another new mission. This time, we had to track down some emergency broadcast that is over in a shipyard, and apparently there might be civilians there that need to be saved. On the way out of the fire station, we kind of got spread out again. We didn't know which way we were going. We did end up getting wrecked by some cultists who had this automatic machine gun turret that just destroyed us. Maybe the hardest difficulty wasn't the best option for us, but hey, we're trying the best we could. As we got closer to where the thing was transmitting from, we started to realize that these broadcasts about rescue being there were actually fake broadcasts by the vampires who were trying to bait survivors to come over, and it was up to us to stop these fake broadcasts. I did end up using my elevator ability a few more times, which was kind of fun. I used this way more than my umbrella ability. Also, I just wanted to note this. It was halfway through day 2 when I realized I had a flashlight that I could have turned on this whole time we'd been playing. Nonetheless, when we got to the warehouse, we killed the person who was the executioner, and we were able to kill all the enemies and save the hostages, which was a rarer feat, I guess. On the next mission, we had to actually go look for an antenna, so we climbed up the lighthouse thinking that's where we're supposed to go, but then it turned out when we got to the top of this lighthouse, which is a pain to run up, it is the windiest road. There are so many weird backtracking and circling around you have to do if you actually want to make your way to the top of this mountain, and we made our way up to the lighthouse before we realized we were in the wrong location, and we didn't have to be at the lighthouse just yet, so we had to go run back down. Some of us jumped down and ended up getting downed and had to be rescued. So then from there, we had to go to this boat. It was kind of a long walk. After you make your way into the boat, you clear the enemies and all of that, you find the antenna, and then more red fog rolls in, and it's supposed to be this challenge as to how you're going to navigate the red fog with, you know, your antenna now and what you have on you. But it kind of seems like they forgot that they gave us the ability to fast travel, so we just fast traveled with the map back to an area kind of closer to the lighthouse, and then began the journey to run up the windiest road to get to the top of the lighthouse. After that, though, we finally actually had a real boss fight, and he was a bit challenging. He kind of teleported around a bit. He had a lot of health. He really was just targeting Luke, weirdly enough, though, which gave Camille, Dim, and I a chance to kind of regroup, heal ourselves up, you know, chat about our days, and then we would go and help Luke fight the enemy.
Actually, I want to chime in here real quick because that's not what happened. They took so long with figuring out their stuff and where I am that I actually died in that time frame, and when I respawned, the boss actually spawned on me, and then he got stuck on this rock, and I just meleeed him to death, and that's how we ended day 2.
Okay, so we were going into day 3 of us playing this game, and we all loaded up, we got ready to go, we had a set time, we were excited, and Xbox Live wasn't working. Yeah, I don't know, Xbox Live was partially down, party systems weren't working, invites weren't going out. Eventually, we were able to mostly brute force our way into the game, where we were all ready to go, except for Dim. For whatever reason, Dim's Xbox just did not want to open up Redfall, so he was sitting there trying to get this thing to work for a hot minute. We ultimately ended up giving up on this, and we just called it a day. We're like, we'll just try again another time. However, a couple hours later, we did regroup, and we're like, you know what? Let's just see if maybe it's better. And we actually were able to get in to play Redfall. So we wasted a little bit of time with our day not being able to play the game, but we still had some time left where we could go run around and do some more. And so as we usually start when we get our new mission, we have to just sprint out of the fire station and head over in whatever direction we need to go. We always somehow randomly get split up and then someone dies, they have to respawn all over again. It's this whole ordeal. I was looting a building and I randomly glitched through a wall here, which gave me access to like under the stairs and all this. They just forgot to put a wall here, or a real wall, so I just kind of phased through it. Kind of surprised this was here. I mean, it wasn't game breaking, but it was a little awkward. We had some quest line, and while we were going there was like some new enemy we hadn't fought before, and Luke started screaming that he got road hogged by an enemy, which is like an Overwatch character. I don't know how that worked really, but he said that it was exactly like that, and to make sure I included that in my notes, so here it is. This is Luke's experience getting quote-unquote road hogged. This was a whole ordeal. There was a lot going on, and we were fighting our way through whatever we could. Long story short, I think the story is wanting us to go to this mansion where maybe some of this vampire stuff started, and the Hollow Man did some stuff. We're not really 100% sure, but we had to find our way to this creepy-looking mansion, and we're like, yeah, this is definitely where the bad guy is. Surprisingly enough, this ended up being one of the most combat-heavy sections of the game that we had experienced so far. There was all sorts of vampire things trying to murder us here, and it was very chaotic, and we were constantly trying to revive each other, trying to stay alive, do the best we can to just get through, and we weren't really prepared enough. A lot of us didn't have enough ammo for this fight, and then we didn't have health either, so we're trying to hide and stay alive while the other people were fighting, and it was just all hell breaking loose. Now, once you get to the mansion, you're supposed to find these 3 dolls that are scattered around, and then put them in the dollhouse that's upstairs. I'd managed to accidentally find 2, and then someone found the 3rd one, but we never actually figured out who found it because the inventory is shared. So we don't know where that 3rd doll was, but we ended up putting them in, and this activates like this flashback experience where the mansion's all restored, and then you have to go around and kill these weird things that then give you like some stories. Essentially, there's this girl and her father's like doing these weird tests on her and killing butterflies or something. That's like a whole part. And you watch these things with the holograms. It's a pretty stereotypical storytelling, nothing like too interesting, but it's supposed to give us like insight as to what happened. And then the kid dies or something, or gets cold. I'm not really sure which one that is, but I'm assuming that that is the start of the whole vampire thing. Then we get traveled back through time, and then we're able to wrap up this level. And you know what? Today, surprisingly, with all the issues we had, wasn't the worst day for Redfall. I, in a weird way, enjoyed my day today. I feel like the game is chaotic enough and fun with friends that I'm not having like the worst time of my life playing the game. I don't think this is a good game by any means, but there's a little silver lining when you're playing with the right group of friends, or even like the weirdest things can kind of be fun. So I'm wondering if the gameplay will lean into that more over the second half of this week, into the finale and whatnot, or if it's gonna just get really repetitive and really boring. It really could go either way. Day 4 was really a mixed bag when it came to Redfall. There was a lot going on, and it's a little hard to like explain this properly, but just bear with me for a moment. So it seems like before we can progress in the story, we have to like do some little filler side quests that are required, but it feels like it's more just the game padding out its storyline quest line so that you don't beat the game too quickly. This is very similar to what we experienced when we forced ourselves to play Anthem for a week, where it was like all of a sudden we had to do like these really meaningless side quests. This leads to a good news, bad news scenario. The good news is I think because we're playing on the hardest difficulty, the gameplay at the very least is starting to get a little bit interesting. The hardest difficulty isn't really like extremely obtusely hard. It's not like playing Halo on legendary difficulty and you just get jackal sniped out of nowhere and you're like, well, what was I supposed to do without knowing the enemy was there ahead of time? There's definitely a team chemistry when you're going into some of the combat, and now that we're getting into more complex scenarios with different types of enemy classes, it does get a little bit interesting and varied, and we do have to employ some form of strategy, or else like we'll all run in there and just die, and then the one person that manages to survive has this stupid task of trying to revive everyone to get them back. This actually is kind of a fun part of the game in a weird way. Like, there is some complexities here, something I didn't expect from this game, and I feel like a lot of players probably missed out on these complexities who just played on like normal difficulty, because weirdly enough, from what I remember when we first played the game, it was very easy and was just like running around doing random things before we stopped playing after that first hour a year ago. I think the difficulty has added a little bit to the stakes and feelings of how we approach things, and this like weird experience that's different than other games, but I did want to at least highlight that I am glad ultimately we did pick the hardest difficulty, which is something I might regret in a minute saying. So, despite the fact we have to do these really weird tasks where we just like run from point to point trying to like find skulls or something, I guess we need to find some vampire skulls that we can use as keys to open up a portal to go after this hollow man guy or something. I'm pretty sure that's like the father of that girl that, I don't know, something with butterflies. It's weird. So there was a lot of like this like little filler stuff we had to go and do, and fortunately, there is a fast travel function that does speed up the process of having to like, as opposed to having to like run from one side of the map to the other. But at the same time, the fast travel thing's really annoying because there's so many loading screens, and then they load you inside of a safe bunker and you have to activate the stuff in the safe like house before you can go and do the mission. Everyone has to be in there. So you open your map, you load to the location, you're in the safe house, you start the mission, and then you leave the safe house, and then you have to do another loading screen. Then maybe you get like your grounding where you are, you figure out you have to go to like the other side of the map, so you want to fast travel again. Well, then you get another loading screen, and these loading screens aren't like short loading screens, they are kind of long. We started calling them Sonic 06 loading screens because back in the day, Sonic 06, that game that was awful, had some of the longest loading screens ever. That game has that reputation of just being awful with loading screens, and while this wasn't nearly as long as Sonic 06 loading screens, it definitely was like, come on, let's just like get going. These aren't main quests we're doing. We just want to get them done quickly so we can continue the story. And it felt slow. And we even brought up the conversation at one point how back when they announced the Xbox Series X and S, before they even were called the Series X and S, when they were called like Project Scarlet, I think, Microsoft did this whole thing where they're like, load screens are going to be a thing of the past, you know, no more long load screens.
One of the things that gamers and developers are incredibly excited about is reducing load times. That's our goal with gaming, is that you don't have those pauses.
And here we are, you know, a game that's pretty much an Xbox exclusive besides the PC release, with some long load screens. Another little nuanced thing that I noticed, character scaling is really weird with the field of view system that's in this game. There was one moment where we're in the safe house getting ready to like load up for this little side quest, and I noticed like Luke's character was standing by the projector screen, and his character seemed so short. I don't know if it was just my FOV, but I think this is just like a weird scaling thing, because I always crank my FOV up in any game, and I've never noticed this before. And we even noticed that with like Dim and Camille, who had different FOVs, also noticing this weird scaling. So it's not just an FOV thing. But yeah, if you look at this, like if a character is like up against a wall, the way the character seemingly scales to a larger height the closer they get to you, it's almost like a mechanic that was engineered into the game. I don't know how to explain it, or if you guys even can see this. If you understand what I'm talking about, maybe let me know in the comments. But do you see how this looks kind of weird back and forth with different characters? I don't know. So we're running around, we're getting these skulls, having to kill special enemies. We fought something called a rook and we almost died, but when we beat them, we actually all got some pretty good weapons, which was a plus. We hadn't gotten good weapons in a minute, so that was nice. After we quested along and we got the skulls that we needed to open up some portal or something, we had to travel over to this doorway that would allow us to go to the Hollow Man's like lair or hideout. This was weird. This whole level design part's a little interesting. So we run in there, we open up the portal, and we had to fight off all the enemies that were preventing us from going through. We spawn at the beginning of the street, so we know like this is okay, building up into some big standoff, some big like major boss fight or some sort of standoff. So we're going up this like uniquely placed location that's through this portal. Like everything looks like, you know, fantastical. The skybox looks interesting. We make our way into the house. house and you think, okay, where do we go? We are at this house. It's like a doll house or whatever. And then we see a door. We're like, okay, well, this is the door we're supposed to go through. So we all run up to the door. We need 4 players there to go through the door, just like you do when you have to start a quest or something. And the door takes us back out to the beginning. So we're like, wait, what just happened? This door is like an exit door. Okay, that's fine. They want to put an exit door somewhere where we can, leave and come back maybe. But what's weird is when you go through the door again, it takes you back at the beginning of the street. So it's like a 3-way teleporter where you have the street entrance, you run up the street into the house, and you go through that door, and it takes you back to the exit that you entered from that took you to the street. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why would they place it like that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. They should have either had 4 doors or just 2 doors. I don't know why they chose to do a 3-way door teleportation system. So that was really annoying, especially with more loading screens, having to go back and forth and back and forth. So here we are. We finally figured out that we weren't supposed to go through that door. And it's time for this big boss fight with the Hollow Man. And I'll be honest, this was an interesting encounter and one that definitely was way, way harder than we thought it would be. Essentially, there's the Hollow Man here. He is super, super strong, has a lot of health, and you have to chip away at his health, and he does various attacks that are pretty strong, and you have to kind of run around. You have ammo and heals in various parts of this map that you can use in this fight and survive through multiple waves of attacks. Actually, it's kind of interesting how they built this boss, because for a first-person shooter in general, I feel like FPS games have a hard time doing boss fights well, and I feel like this was actually a almost well-crafted boss encounter. There's different mechanics, different phases where like he's shielded for a while and he has different attacks that are pretty deadly, unfortunately. But here's the thing, it's not really a polished boss fight. It felt like doing a Destiny raid, but if the Destiny raid was made in Roblox, for example. I feel like that's the best way to explain it. Like, it has some very interesting mechanics to it. However, the implementation is all over the place. There was times where these enemies are supposed to explode, and they would explode doing damage, but the character model was still there, not exploded. So it was confusing because then you don't know if it's going to explode. And there were times where you would be in cover and you're still taking damage to like random parts of the attack that doesn't make sense. And none of these were really that big of a deal until we get to the end when we're getting very close to killing the boss. He has this weird attack that he only does in the final phase after his 2 shielded phases, where he essentially starts sucking everyone's blood at the same time. And this attack does a lot of damage. Like, if you're not fully healed and hiding behind some sort of wall, you just die straight up. There was times where we would heal ourselves, and we would heal ourselves in the middle of being attacked, and even with the heal, it wouldn't be enough time to heal up, or if we did heal up, sometimes it would still kill us. This meant on multiple attempts, we would just get to the final phase, which took like 10 to 15 minutes alone, and then die because we all got sucked off at the same time. We eventually figured out that we can survive better if we're hiding behind a pillar the second he hits that attack. However, a lot of the time we would still take damage when we were behind a pillar or getting behind a pillar in the few seconds we have preemptively for that attack. We tried a lot of things. I tried using my shield ability, Luke tried using his healing ability. Dim said that if you activate your ult right when he does the ability, you have immunity for a second, but that seemed to only apply to him, and he does the attack multiple times, so by the time you try it again, your immunity is gone. We were stuck here for a long time trying this battle over and over and over again, and we were faced with crossroads eventually after getting him so close to dead multiple times, and then him just to suck us all off and we die. And mind you, when he sucks us off, all of a sudden his health regenerates at the same time. So it's like a double-edged sword. We can't do damage fast enough to counteract how quick we're getting bled out here. So we had to rethink strategies. We considered lowering the difficulty, but I felt like the difficulty being at where it was really managed to make the game not feel that awful. And after all these attempts, we were figuring out the mechanics, and that felt rewarding. We were just not able to finish that little gap at the end to kill him. So we decided that maybe we're just a little too underleveled, and the reason that they had that buffer where they wanted you to go and do all these side quests was because we're supposed to maybe do more than what we did. So after maybe 6 or 7 attempts of us wiping, we decided to go through that door again, teleport out of the world, and try to do some stuff in the overworld to get our level up, maybe find some better weapons, and come in better prepared for this boss fight. But man, we did not expect a roadblock this large to stop us in a game that, on How Long to Beat says you could beat the campaign in like 9 hours. We didn't expect to be at this point and just get stuck here. So that's what we decided to do. We were going to go and try to figure out what we could do. We ran around and we decided decided we're gonna go try to do these lair things. I can't remember what the term was called. Luke will put it on the screen here when he's editing. And as we made our way closer to it, there were a ton of enemies over here. We ended up killing them and almost dying alone here. But one of the big enemies we killed ended up dropping this purple item, which is like a vial or something, and this actually reduces the amount of damage taken when you get attacked by an enemy that does like the blood sucking thing. So this might come in handy when we get to this boss fight, and maybe we can survive that encounter. But as we were kind of getting to the end of our session this day, we finally made our way to the doorway to start this like new type of encounter that apparently had been altered massively in the previous update from how it used to perform in the earlier release of the game. So going into day 5, we were like, okay, well, we gotta get stronger. We gotta figure something out. We decided to venture into one of these nests, which is an interesting experience. Essentially, they're these like underground cave systems with a lot of enemies, like enemies everywhere. And it's very, very chaotic. You kind of have to protect your teammates, or at least revive them when they go down, because you can get overrun very easily. But if you make your way all the way through the nest with all the enemies, there's this like section with a giant heart, and you have to like take out these certain enemies and like free up these people that are being like drained or whatever from the heart. And then essentially you get a timer countdown before the nest collapses, and you can run around and quickly go and gather as much loot as you can. We found that the loot in here was actually decently strong. Now, we did think originally that the timer countdown meant that we had to make it to the door in time if we wanted to escape, but we later found out it's just a timer until you're unable to pick up more loot, which was nice. But yeah, we also were paying more attention to what weapons we're using and how much the damage output was, because even though some of the weapons were higher ranks than other weapons, it didn't mean the damage output was higher. So sometimes the lower rarity weapon was better, and also there's like other little things you can change. We ended up running around and doing a couple of these nests because they didn't take too long, and it seemed like the loot payoff was really, really good. We weren't leveling up as much as we wanted to, of course, but hey, we'll take better loot if we can get it. And ultimately, after doing a couple of these, we chose to go on and attempt the boss fight once more. We were feeling a little more confident, still a little nervous. We made our way up to the house, made our way back in, and the boss fight was like way easier this time around. Our damage was actually killing him pretty quickly, so we didn't have to like sit there trying to survive for long periods of time while he was doing all sorts of attacks on us. And while his attacks still did quite a bit of damage to us individually, the fact that we were moving through the boss fight faster meant we didn't have to like endure as long as we originally had to. Matter of fact, by the time we got him to the last phase after he shields himself again, we were able to quickly kill him before he activated that suck attack that would take away all of our health and kill us instantly every time, which was something we weren't able to do before because he was just like a bullet sponge. But now with stronger weapons, we were able to clear our way through that and defeat this boss, which was a pretty big victory for us. We were feeling really proud of ourselves, and it did feel in a weird way like this was like swelling up to be like a big finale of the game. And then after this, it turns out there's a lot more game to still go, which kind of surprised me. Story-wise, I don't know what's going on. I've never known what's going on. I think this is that crazy doctor guy that we just finished off here. But then it turns out we have to go to the other side of Red Falls. Red Falls? I think it says Red Falls in some parts of this. And to get there, we have to go through this like little like weird portal thing with these doors, and there's these wrong doors that you're not supposed to go through. And you keep going through the wrong door over and over again because you don't learn your lesson. And eventually, after fighting your way through and finding all the right doors, you get down to this tunnel that it kind of leads you into the next area of the game where part 2 of the game takes place. And oddly enough, when we're in the tunnel, Luke and Camille loaded into a cutscene kind of explaining the story right away. But Dim and I were kind of standing around for a second, a little confused. While they were talking about seeing a cutscene, we didn't have any cutscene. And then after like 5 or 6 seconds of me like looking around awkwardly, boom, then I got my cutscene loaded up. But Dim still never got his cutscene. So after all of our cutscenes ended, we continued moving on forward. We made our way through the tunnel, and then randomly, like 5 minutes later, Dim's cutscene started up, and he was the only one with the cutscene that we had already seen earlier. A little of a weird thing to happen, but I mean, and weirder things have also happened, so I don't know. From there, we had to make our way on this like bridge area that we kept falling off and trying to find our way back up and trying to find our way back around. But long story short, we're trying to get to this like marine lab museum place or something, and this will be like our new headquarters, like the fire station originally was. We eventually got over there and found our way inside. We had to kill some stuff, but ultimately you secure this area like you did the fire station, and this becomes your new like base of operations. Weirdly enough, we had this like phantom zombie just chilling here for whatever reason. after we cleared the base. We couldn't kill him and he was just there. Also, this dude has like giant hands, right? Like, I'm not just imagining that the proportions are a little weird here. Like, I brought this up and everyone seemed to agree that there was something weird about the scaling here, but we still don't fully understand why the game looks the way that it does. Okay, so story-wise, I'm pretty sure the main thing is like we found out that Hollow Man we killed was just like one of many like gods that are causing Redfall to be in the state that it is. And I remember pointing this out during the cutscene, but it seems like our characters actually care about the town more than their own life. They're like, man, I used to love Redfall. Redfall was so cool of a town. I really hope we can restore it back to the way it once was. It's like, yo, this is like apocalyptic world. There are enemies and people and vampires trying to kill you, and you care about the state of this town that's already mostly destroyed? Like, if I was these characters, I'd be like, I just want to survive. I just want to get out of this town and never look back. But these guys are like, oh, we can do this. We can save the town. Like, I think the town's been like past saving for a hot minute at this point. Nonetheless, so the big bad enemy that we took out is one of like 3, and there's 2 other big bad enemies we're gonna have to go and take out next before we can face off against the big bad enemy. So that's where we are now. We ended up going to try to get intel on one of the big bad enemies that took us over to like these buildings here, and we had to go look for information we could find. There were enemies all over the place. We were climbing up buildings and whatnot. We got split up a few times. We died a couple of times, but we're slowly chipping away here, and we were kind of making a little bit of progress. Ultimately, it's nice to finally be in like the second half of the game, since we're already like finishing up day 5 at this point, and we want to finish the game before the week is up, obviously. So I feel like we're maybe a little behind where we should be, but something's telling me that the second half of the story is going to go by a little bit quicker, maybe be a little more action-packed. So I think we have a couple of big days coming up ahead of us with 6 and 7. Going into day 6, it seems like Camille would not be able to join us, so it was just Dim, Luke, and I going on our adventure through the world of Redfall, and boy oh boy was this new day a little bit interesting. For the most part, the missions we had to do were pretty repetitive. We kind of had to run around, go do something at one place, run backwards, go do something at another place, grab some stuff, gain skulls again, because that's what we need, I guess, to open up like the next main part for the story. So it was a lot of us just running around doing these little quests that are mandatory, and yeah, we did notice an influx of glitches that kind of were starting to be more and more noticeable. There was one point where we died, and when we respawned, Luke couldn't see anything. He was just on a black screen. Though his character was there and he could hear sounds of other characters talking, we noticed he could walk around from our perspective, but that was it. So it was up to me to try to lead him to death so he could try to reload. During this whole time, I clipped my perspective of this. It turned out that my gun had also like despawned. Like, this whole time I just didn't have a gun for whatever reason. I don't know why. I didn't notice it till later, but yeah, that was one thing that happened. Ultimately, Luke dying did not fix the issue, so instead he had to restart the whole lobby and we would have to go ahead and rejoin him. So, you know, GG. That honestly wasn't even the only weird thing that happened. Like, there was this moment where Dim was inside of the desk, which we thought was kind of goofy. And then later on, I was fighting my way with some enemies, and all of a sudden my like cursor popped up on the screen, and my cursor was just moving freely, and I couldn't jump or anything. And yeah, this was weird. I don't know why this was happening. It was really annoying. I couldn't see any of my HUD details. And then I noticed, like, when I pressed the A button, I would shoot, even though the A button's never mapped to the shoot button. So I'm like even more confused at this point. Like, I filmed my controller to prove that this was happening because I didn't know what to think of this. And then I ended up leaving and rejoining the game, which took forever. Loading times are getting more and more aggressive, it seems like. The loading times in the second half of the game are substantially longer than what they were in the first half of the game. I think just loading into a play session takes like 3 or 4 minutes now for each of us, and we're all on Xbox Series X's. So I don't know what's going on there. And then when I loaded back in, all of my weapons were unequipped. So then I had to go and open my menus and re-equip all of the weapons. There were some other interesting things that happened on this day. Like, for instance, we found out that when you hit level 10, you do have the option to respec your skill trees. I've had this elevator ability that I leveled up, and then also my character can call her ex-boyfriend to fight her battles. She also has this dumb umbrella ability that I never used. So I was pretty happy with my skills that I had picked. I don't feel like they're really that useful. Maybe the elevator one for some shortcuts, but that's about all I have for that. Luke has a pretty cool like rift ability that can heal people in his radius that's been useful a few times. Dim has something. What does Dim do? Oh, he has like a teleport ability, and you can like teleport sometimes. And then I don't remember what Camille had either, but if she's able to join us before we run through this week, I'll ask her. So after doing a lot of the same stuff, but this time on like a more intense difficulty, it seemed like, because it's later in the game, there's a lot of enemies every step along the way. It does get very chaotic and stuff. Once we got through that though, and we did some exploring, like this area that had all these like lasers in it, which were kind of deadly, we did decide to go ahead and take on the next big boss. And we were a little hesitant. We were like, you know what, we go and we do this boss, like if we really struggle with it, you know, we can't beat it. You know, when Camille gets back on, we'll get her caught up. We'll do some nests, get better loot, and then we'll take on the boss again. But this boss was kind of a cakewalk. We just had to run around, dodge some stuff, and then shoot her. And then there's like an animation that plays when you finish her off, and then that's it. So one boss down. I think it seemed like there was like 2 more big baddies left, and I assume that once we do the other one, because we had an option on which quest line to do first, this is the other quest line that we have to now go into. After we do that, I assume it opens up the final bit. So we got some big stuff ahead of us, but day 6 was a very buggy day, I think, where just like things weren't functioning the way they were maybe supposed to. And now we're finally on day 7. Can we finally beat this game after a week of grinding through this experience? It's been interesting. A lot of the game has been not good, but a lot of the game has been surprisingly not the worst thing. Kind of fun to play with friends. That's neat. But this last day changes my perspective on a lot of things. Now that we're finally a group of 4 again, we had to go do a bunch of just like little side quests and stuff, because once again, we have to go and get skulls to open up the door so we can go and fight the boss. It's this copy and pasted formula that's not really fun. It just feels like a lot of filler just to make the game longer rather than like unique experiences. Yes, we do have better guns, but health-wise, we're pretty much as weak as we've always been this whole time, and it can get really frustrating to die. And now in these scenarios, there's a lot more enemies, and while we do kind of approach them a little more carefully than we did early on, some of the times it's not really even that much of a skill issue. Like an enemy can just have a crazy hit radius, and it just will be a really, really wide, enormous hit that can almost fully take out all of your health, and it'll just randomly happen from time to time. Also, we've spent so much time just being downed, like away from the group because one of us would stray off, bleeding out, knowing that no one's gonna come and save us. And you know what, like, okay, that's our punishment. But the fact that there's not like a bleed out quicker button or something like that where you can just like be like, okay, no one's gonna save me, can I just like die please, and just respawn, you know, at the main safe house or whatever, and then I can make my way to my team afterwards. Nope, you have to sit there and just wait this slow circle out for the longest time, and we've spent so much time all individually just bleeding out, waiting. And then the worst thing is occasionally there's a glitch that'll occur where the bleed out will start and there's no timer. You're just stuck there indefinitely unless your teammate will run across the map and get you, or you leave the game and rejoin. And that's also just like a really dumb glitch to even be able to be in the game. I think this is something that's intended for boss fights only, where there's not a bleed out timer, even though I feel like a bleed out timer would make more sense in a boss fight. But nonetheless, yeah, this was something really, really annoying. And we also noticed on this day, it felt like the game was breaking more than we had experienced in previous days. Like maybe, I don't know, they didn't expect anybody to actually make it this far into the game, because the amount of glitches we were now experiencing compared to the first couple of days is astronomically more. And I'll list off a couple of examples here. There was a glitch we all had at different times where we would load into the game and we weren't able to interact with anything, so we'd either have to leave the game, or sometimes we'd have to restart the entire lobby because someone wouldn't be able to use their abilities or fast travel or anything like that. There was a glitch where we had like really long loading screens that would just lead to nothing. We also had it where we had this weird glitch where I loaded in, I could see Camille, but I couldn't see Dim or Luke anywhere, and then Camille said that she was standing still from her perspective, but from my perspective, she was like running around, teleporting, hitting walls, like just really weird things. So I had to reset there. As we were going on our quests to get more skulls so we could go do this third boss fight, we had this weird glitch where my vampires were desynced from Luke's vampires. Like Luke went down and I'm here trying to save Luke, right? And now with the vampires, you have to stake them to fully kill them, or else they will regenerate their health and then you have to fight them all over again. So I took out the health, and as I go to try to stake the vampire, it wouldn't let me stake him. I was pretty sure my weapon had a stake at the end of it, but just to be sure, I switched weapons. I tried to stake it and it still wouldn't let me stake him, and he ended up regenerating health, then finishing me off, killing me. Now, I thought I was in the right spot to stake the enemy, but on Luke's perspective, the vampire was like a couple of feet away from me, like behind where I was looking. So I wasn't even looking in the right place because the vampires were desynced across both of our instances. There were some weird glitches we were having with clambering, where like you would try to climb up and an animation would play. Sometimes it would just teleport you back up even if you fell. There was this time where I was just looking at Luke's character with his ankles in the floor for whatever reason. I don't know what happened here. But nonetheless, dealing with all these issues aside, we did manage to go do the little quests we had to do, get the skulls we needed, and continue on to the boss fight, which we thought was the big boss fight, and then after this there'd be like the big finale boss fight, and then we were done with the game, finally. Wasn't the case. We go in here to fight this boss, and the boss is, dumb. He's in the ground, right? And you have to shoot him, and he has a couple of attacks, like he can swing his arms and punch, or like swing a sword, and he has like these rocks that he throws at you, and a couple of other things. This smoke gas thing that'll just kill you very, very quickly, which is pretty unfair, I felt like. And here's the thing, like the boss fight already pretty challenging. We're on the hardest difficulty. We understand that. But at the same time, like, he already has all these attacks, but then his attacks sometimes aren't even fair to begin with. Like, look at this moment right here, right? I am shooting at the boss, he's not looking at me, and then bam, I'm dead. What happened? Let's slow it down and see the playback here, right? So first of all, he is swinging his sword backwards, and you can see I already start taking damage while he's in his backswing. So why am I taking damage when he's not even doing an attack yet? And then he hits pretty far away from me, and I take all of this damage like it's a direct hit, and I go down, which I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's accurate at all to what is being portrayed visually. We ended up using the fact that this boss is like in mostly a static place for the whole boss fight to our advantage, though, because like we mentioned earlier, in boss fights you don't have a bleed out timer. You can just stay down for the entirety of the boss fight, and what ended up happening is we kept going down, and as long as one of us was alive, we wouldn't end up wiping. So it was easier for us to just stay down when he's not attacking us, have one player hide, and the rest of us just shoot at the boss with our strong weapons, because he can't do any more damage to us. We're already down, and just do that, and we drained his health, and then we killed him. Pretty okay boss fight, I guess. I mean, I like the boss fights. They're at least unique. I was worried we were gonna get the same boss fight from earlier 3 times, so this was better than what it could have been, but man, we've been at it for a while, and the game is starting to fall apart in front of us, and it's starting to become more and more frustrating. So finally, with this boss fight, and we fought the big 3 enemies, we thought it's time to go for the final boss. But no, that's not the case. We have to go and get even more skulls before we can go and do the final boss of the game. We go to the Ferris wheel area by this, like, I don't know, boardwalk thing, and there's this vampire dude that, I don't know, I thought looked really goofy. We have to go get more skulls, so we're gonna be at this for a while. Also, I got stuck in this curtain, like behind the Ferris wheel. I couldn't get out for a while. So after spending hours on day 7, making progress, chipping our way through the game, dealing with all of this stuff, there's still more to go. And I don't think we're mentally ready to just like go on and finish this up after doing all the stuff that we did. So for the first time in one of these challenges, we actually ended up pushing the video to do an 8th day. Yeah, we were all just dying to do an 8th day of Redfall, so we couldn't help it. And here we are. Day 8. Going into day 8, things get a little spicy here. First off, it was like the game was telling us not to play the game an extra day because loading in together to actually get to play was a pain. We had long load times, half the time it didn't work, we had to reset the lobby multiple times, just the same old stuff we've been talking about for the previous couple of days. It took almost 30 minutes maybe of trying to get the game to work before we're actually all in the lobby, ready to go. And then Dim had to go do something, or I don't remember, but he kept lagging out, so he rejoined, lagged out, rejoined. We waited around for him. I remember I was standing on top of the Ferris wheel and I watched Dim load into the sky somewhere. Like I saw his name up there, and then his name would like occasionally move, and I would just track wherever his name would go. Sometimes it would just go across the map. It was really interesting. Dim had no idea what was going on, but eventually we got the crew together. We were good to go, and we were going to go do the quest where we had to go get all the skulls. As it turns out, fun fact, we don't actually have to get skulls. We're looking for body parts or something. This story is getting out of hand. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. So essentially we have to run to all of these like locations. We go into these like different areas we hadn't seen yet the whole game. It's almost like these areas were maybe planned to be bigger experiences, and then they cut them and they're like, oh, let's just slap it onto the big finale. Because the areas are kind of cool looking, but you only get to see it for a few minutes and then that's it. And it's usually just like one of those cheap like echo cutscenes playing where we see the like outlines of these characters just standing around talking while we wait. It's really not that engaging. But finally, it was the moment we had all been waiting for. Time to go ahead and fight the boss. We had all the parts. We went to all the things. We go to where the big finale is supposed to like teleport us into the door, and we head in, and sure enough, the boss is that vampire lady we saw from the very beginning of the game, who talks to us once, then we never see her again, and now here she is at the end, as we suspected. And we were ready for the fight of our lives. So we go in, and immediately we realize, like, this isn't going to be a walk in the park. Like, the enemies are insane. There's so many vampires, like, just sprinting around everywhere, and we have to go and, like, untether these things to take the shields off of the main boss. So, like, we were just getting destroyed immediately. We had to regroup a couple times and maybe start thinking about how we were going to approach this strategically, because this is going to be, like, the fight of all fights for Redfall. And, like, we struggled with some of the bosses before, so we were fully expecting this to be, you know, an endeavor. So as we got ready to do this, we stuck together a little closer, and we tried to like take out the enemies and quickly revive people where we could. We were able to get the first untether down, and then we had to like run across. There's all types of very powerful like specialty mini boss vampires spawning in, which are a pain. So we had to like kind of focus our fire on those guys while trying to stay alive and continuously move at the same time. It was not like a very professional gameplay experience. I felt like we were very sloppy maybe, but hey, we were getting through it. We got the second untether, so that was good. More and more enemies were going, and then we ran over, we got the third untether, which would then allow the main boss to be damaged for like the damage phase. Except to our surprise, after doing the last untether, you beat the boss. That's just it. No damage phase. The damage phase was the untethering. We were so surprised and also confused because we were expecting us just to start the damage phase. We thought we'd have to run around and do like 3 or 4 more phases of this whole thing. But no, you just do it once and then you just get the little animation of you killing the boss, and that's it. Now, 2 of us did fall off the map trying to do the little finale animation. That's besides the point. Luke was able to do it, and that's all that counts. And we beat the game, and that was it. That was the end of the game. It was actually ridiculous. We thought for sure this was going to be like a bullet sponge boss. We were going to have to like do all this stuff and then repeat and just stay alive. There's health kits everywhere. We never really had to pick up health kits or ammo in the final boss fight, and it was kind of a joke finale. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. We sat through, we watched the credits in disbelief, and then the game just ends. You're back on the menu. If you load up again, it just starts the game over again. So yeah, that was the experience of the 8th day of Redfall, and it was not at all what we expected it to be. What we did do though is after all of this was done, we decided to go to the first fire station where it all started. We had to like clear it out again, which was a pain. And then from there we were like, you know what, let's decompress and go over our thoughts a little bit. We all sat down on the couches and we just had a moment to kind of talk about what our experience was like. And it was interesting to hear like Luke, Dim, and Camille's thoughts on all this. What did you think of that final boss fight?
Absolutely underwhelming.
What was your favorite part of this game?
When we stopped playing every night.
How did you like the story?
I don't know. What story, I guess? I don't know. It's very generic. Super generic.
And the writing?
Cringe.
Did you have more fun with this or Anthem?
Oh, fuck. Combat was better in Anthem. They're both shit games. Like, which one's worse, horseshit or bullshit?
Definitely horse.
Are you sad we did not do more side missions?
Knowing that the world gets reset after completing the main campaign, a little bit.
Do you wish you could have done this game alone?
God, no. Because I could not imagine just dying, resetting, and fighting a boss over and over again.
How did you feel about the difficulty ramp up across the duration of the game?
It ramped up?
Were you happy we played that one time without you, or?
It's okay. I don't really mind. The part that I really feel left out about is that I wasn't able to be in a furry suit, so.
Would you play one of these bad games with us again for a week?
I would.
Any bad game?
Yeah. I don't discriminate.
And then finally, just before we were ready to log off and say goodbye to Redfall, Luke hit us with one last important message about this. Luke's just playing a bugle horn through his mic. The fact that I just
Luke's just this furry character with this voice.
So yeah, ultimately that was our experience on Redfall. There's some good here. I think if you are playing with a group of friends that you enjoy playing games with, you can have fun with this game for sure, because the real fun is like playing with friends, not so much like the specifics of a game. However, there are other games out there that are also fun. I do recommend if you are going to do it on the hardest difficulty allows you to do it on for your first playthrough. It does make the game a little bit more fun, and then just laugh at all the random, dumb, broken things that happen along the way, and you'll probably have an okay time. But once again, there's better co-op games out there, and we are looking into another big 4-person co-op game series that we want to do a video on next. So if you enjoyed this journey with us and you want to see this group, us try to do a different game in the future that's going to be a pretty long journey, make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications on. And thank you to our patrons for supporting us, and that's it. Cool. GG. Bye, guys.